Hello and welcome to a new tutorial. So today I thought I would go back to basics and do a updated version of a previous video. So I'm going to show you the types of tools that you will need for lino printing, how to use them, and also how to get your lino ready for printing. So I hope you enjoy the new version and keep on watching. So a few things you will need before we get started. So obviously you need some tools, and I'll talk through the different types of those in a second. You'll be needing some lino. Underneath your lino you need an anti-slipping mat, and that's really important for when you're carving that the lino doesn't move or slip, which will cause you injury. It's also really useful to have a cutting mat for when you want to cut your lino to size, a metal ruler, and a really good decent knife, like this, for cutting your lino. It's also useful to have some acrylic paint, which I will tell you why in a moment. So, if the lino isn't the size that you want it, you need to cut it down to size. So this is where you need a good cutting mat, a good metal ruler and a pencil, and a nice sharp knife. So all I'm going to do is measure the size of lino that I want. So I'm just going to do this 8 centimetres. So using the pencil, just going to draw myself a line. So that's where I'm going to cut. So again, with the metal ruler. Now rather than just trying to cut all the way through, I'm just going to score a few times. And then I'm just going to fold the lino like that. Then hold it like that, so this scored mark is facing towards you. And then taking the knife, I'm just going to run down the line. Oh, and there, missed a little bit there. Joys of live filming. So there you've got your two pieces. So the lino I'm using for this demo is called traditional lino. It comes in grey, or you can buy red type. And it's basically made out of cork, linseed oil and wood pulp, and it's all compressed down onto a Hessian fabric backing. So as you can see, I'm using the grey type. This is slightly softer than the red, so people find it a lot easier to use. But as you can see, it is grey, and when you cut into it, it's going to be grey. And people find it quite difficult to see where they cut. So I find it really useful to stain the lino first. So I'm just going to get some acrylic paint. Doesn't matter what colour you use. And I'm just going to put a tiny amount on there. And then taking a damp cloth or piece of tissue, I'm just going to rub that in. And the idea is that you stain your lino. You don't want any lumpy bits of paint on there because it will affect the print later on. So there you go, you're just staining your lino. So what tools do you use for lino printing? They usually come in 3 types. So you've got the pencil type, so as you can see they're shaped like a pencil. You get little sets where you get detachable blades, and then you get the mushroom shaped handled ones. But with all three, they all have the basic shapes of a cutting tool. So you get a V tool, you get a U tool, which is like the shape of the blade, and then you'll get a knife, and then you usually get a chisel type tool. Now when I'm teaching my classes, I will always recommend to start with to buy a set like these. So these are reasonably cheap. They're a good quality metal, and you've got a nice range of tools to get you going. And then once you've built up your confidence with your cutting and you want to invest a bit more in your tools, then I would go on to using these types of tools. Because these, you get a much greater variety of sizes. So this is a really tiny V tool, then it won't quite focus, and that's a tiny U tool. So you get much greater variety of sizes of those, and they tend to be much more comfortable to hold, because you just hold them in the palm of your hand and just carve away like that. Quite often you get people coming along in my classes and they brought these little kits. They tend to come in beginner sets. I'm not a great fan of these, because you need to keep changing the blades over every time you want to change the tool, which can be quite annoying if you're doing a lot of lino printing. And quite often these tend to be quite cheap sets to buy, and the metal tends to be cheaper and tends to blunt really easily. Now these are a brand new set, and I've only tried to use one tool once and it was already blunt before I even began, which is really not great for a set of tools. So personally, I know it's personal preference, but I would rather go for a set like this, and I'll put the detail in the comments at the end, and then build up to investing in these. But for the demo, I'm going to be using these. So let's get cutting. So the first tool I'm going to show you how to use is the V tool. You can see when you hold it up, the blade is shaped like a V. So with these pencil ones, you kind of want to hold them a little bit like a pencil. And I'm holding it fairly low down to the blade, because if I hold it up there, I'm not going to have much control over what I'm doing. So holding it lower down, you have far more control. And I'm going to cut at about that sort of angle. You don't want to be too deep, because you just dig into it. Too shallow, or shallow even, you just skim over it. So you kind of want that type of angle. Sometimes I find it quite useful to use this finger and just gently rest it on top. I'm not putting any weight over it, and I'm just going to slide over. The lighter I am, the thinner my line will be. The more pressure I put in, the wider my line will be. And the V tool is mainly used for line work. So see, I've got some nice lines there. Now to do a curve, it's quite useful to use a marker pen. And I'm just going to draw a curve. And I'm going to follow that curve. Now, it's really tempting just to start cutting and twist yourself around. Try not to do that. The idea is that you're always cutting away from you and you turn your lino. So, I would recommend, if you're a complete beginner, to start cutting, stop, leave the tool there and twist your liner around, and then carry on. Stop, twist your liner around until you get to a point where you can cut and turn your lino at the same time. The main thing to remember is to take your time, don't rush, and always cut away from you turn your lino around. If you find your line is too thin, that's fine, just go back over it again. It's better to make your line too narrow and thin and then make them thicker rather than going in too deep and thick to start with. You can also use the V tool to create lots of little triangle marks. This time I'm going to hold it fairly upright and I'm just going to use the very tip of the tool. And I'm going to do a bit of a dig and flick motion. So just dig and flick. And you can see I've got lots of little triangles. You can also use the V tool to create lots of tiny dots. Again, I'm just going to use the very tip and hold it fairly upright. But this time, I'm just going to dig the tool in and then turn my liner around. And then I get a little circle. So that is the V tool. So the next tool is the knife tool. Now you usually find when you're buying a set, you usually find the knife tool is for right-handed people. And the way to tell is that when you hold it into your right hand, if the flat side is facing your left, then it's for the right-handed person. You can see there's a slight bevel edge. So if I was holding that in my left hand, it's the wrong direction, because the flat side should be facing my left. You can buy a left-handed tool. I've got one there. So you can see the difference. So when I hold it in my left hand, the flat side is facing my right. So you can see this is for the left hand, this is for the right hand. Left-handed tools do tend to be really expensive. So if you're not sure if you want to invest in one, I'll show you how to use the right-handed tool if you're left-handed. So, first up, why would you need to use a knife tool? It's mainly used for line work, and a lot of people find when they're using the V tool for lines, they start off the width of the line that they want, but end up much wider at the end. With the knife tool, once you've got used to using it, it gives you much more control over the width of your line. It's easier to follow a line, so I'm just going to draw a couple with my marker pen. So with the right-handed tool, if you're right-handed, so I'm going to cut this line. You want to hold your tool upright and then tilt it to your right. Remember, the flat side needs to be facing your left. And I'm just going to use the very tip of the blade. Because if I try and cut the entire lino with the blade, you're just creating more work for yourself. So I'm just using the tip. I'm starting at the top right of that line. And I'm just going to dig it in. And then I'm just going to bring it forward towards myself, cutting as I go along. Again, take your time with this one, because this is the only tool you're going to be using towards yourself. And then you need to turn your liner around. Then go to the top right again. Don't go over the line you've just cut. You want to go slightly over to the right. Dig the tip of the blade in, then bring it back, and you should see the lino popping up. And then you've got a nice line. Now if you're left-handed and you've only got a right-handed tool, this time you want to have the, again, flat side facing the your right, and you're going to start at the bottom left of the line and just going to dig it up. Bear in mind I'm not left-handed, so this might be a bit wobbly, and I'm just in here, I'm just going to push the knife up. I've already gone off of that line. Remember, turn your liner around and bottom left again, not directly over that line, but go slightly to the side of it and push back up again, and hopefully your lino should pop up. Oh, I've not done a great job of that. As I said, I'm not left-handed, and it feels weird. I'm just going to do it again. That's better. And then the line pops up. Now, if you do have a knife, a left-handed knife, so when you hold it up, this time you want to start at the top left. Remember to use just the tip. Bring it towards you. Remember, I'm not left-handed, so this feels really weird. I'm just taking my time with this. Oh, I've gone offline. It's really common to go off of your line when you start learning to use the knife tool. I like to call it the beginner's drift. Then so I've turned my liner around, top left, and I'm just going to bring that back down. Move this thumb out of the way just in case. Oh, not the greatest line there. Go over a bit more. Oh. Okay, I'm not a left-handed person, and that's really tricky for me. But if I was using the right-handed tool, I find it much easier. So, but you get the idea. If you can afford to buy a left-handed tool and you're left-handed, then I will always go for that. Or try and use the right-handed tool in the way that I showed you just a moment ago. So you can see by using the knife tool, it gives you some lines. Now to do a curved line, again you want to follow a line. So for right-handed, you want to start at the top right of the line, using the tip. Just going to bring that round, and again with the V tool, I'm going to stop and turn my liner around. Carry on cutting, stop, turn my liner around. And I'm doing the outside edge first. Then turn my liner around, start from the top right. Start cutting, stop, turn my liner around, and keep doing that until I've done my line. And again, if you're using a left-handed tool, you start from the top left, cut around, turn your liner around, start from the top left again, and cut around. If you're left-handed and using the right-handed tool, you want to start at the bottom left. Cut round, stop, go round, turn your liner around again, and start from the bottom left and cut up until you make your lines. So they are the knife tools for cutting lines. You can also use the knife tool to create nice crisp edges. So let's say I want to eventually cut all this area away, and I want my edge to be really nice and sharp, especially my corners. So I'm going to take the knife and I'm just going to score around the edge. So if you're right-handed, you want to start at the top right of the area. So the area that you're cutting away is on your left. So I'm just going to cut down there. If you're left-handed and you're using the right-handed tool, you want to start at the bottom left and cut up. Or if you're using the left-handed knife, you start at the top left hand corner and cut down. And then this introduces the U-tools. And as you see, when you hold them up, wait, focus, the blade is dipped like a U. And these are mainly used for cutting away large areas of lino. And I'm going to hold it like I would the V tool. And I'm just going to cut towards the line I've just scored. And you should feel it stop. And you can see it's giving you a really nice crisp edge. And before I get to that corner, I'm just going to turn it around and carry on cutting. As you can see, I've got a nice crisp corner. Let's cut that again. Yeah, got a nice crisp edge and corner. Now to do like a curved area, so I want to cut all that away. So again, taking your knife, so start top right if you're top right if you're right-handed. If you're left-handed with the right tool, start bottom left. Or if you've got a left-handed knife, start at the top left. And you just want to score around the shape. So again, with any curve, start cutting, turn your lino, not the knife. Just do part of the circle. Then taking your U-tool, rather than going from edge to edge, so you're likely to lose that curve, I'm going to start about there and cut one wedge out, turn my lino, so cut, turn, so I'm cutting out wedges. And you get a curve. Now you probably find this is a bit lumpy, and we'll address that in a moment, because there's two more things you can do with a U-tool. You can create lots of little semicircles, so like with the little triangles, you want to hold it fairly upright and do a bit of a dig flick movement. Well, it makes quite a satisfying noise. And you can see you've got lots of semicircles. And you can also use it to create little circles. And again, I'm holding it upright, just digging the tool in. And this time, keeping my tool still, and I'm just going to twist my liner around. Until I've got a circle. And that is the U-tool. So what do you do when you cut a large area away and it's really lumpy and you don't want that to pick up ink when you're printing? So you want to flatten it off. So what I would do is I would take my U-tool and just gently go over the raised bits just to flatten them off a bit. But I often find with beginners, they tend to make it worse and make it even more lumpy. So if you're finding that happening, then it's quite useful to pick up the tool that looks like a chisel. So see there's a flat side and there's a slight beveled side there. So you want to hold it like the V and U tool, and you want the flat side facing upwards. And I'm just going to glide over all those lumpy bits. It just smooths it off. So it just, you can't really see, but it just makes it a much flatter surface. And the final thing you can do with the chisel, you can make lots of little dash marks. So I'm just going to draw a couple of lines. And I'm just going to go, so we hold it fairly upright again. At the bottom of that line, I'm just going to dig it in. Then I'm going to turn my liner around to the bottom of that. Remember the flat side to face up. And it gives you a little dash mark. It is determined by the width of your tool, so you can't make the dash narrower, but you can always make it wider just by going to the side and making it a wider dash. So they are all the tools that you use. So you've got a V tool, a U tool, a knife and a chisel. So I hope you found that useful. Let me know in the comments. If you have any questions, please do let me know. Okay, bye.